Awesome. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to today's session. My name is Karen Kroon, and I am the Membership, Tourism, and Group Sales Administrator for the Anchorage Museum. So I'm very happy to be here joining all of you today. Whova is a new platform for us, so excited to be here trying this out. And I wanted to just kind of spend this next hour in conversation. We have some best of the best tourism experts from Alaska joining us today. So on our panel, I wanted to introduce first Christina Colvin, who's the Director of Logistics for Premier Alaska Tours. And so Christina will be with us, as well as Mandy Garcia, who is the owner of Salmonberry Tours. And we'll put both of their contact information in the chat function. Super excited today as we go through. I wanted to share with you, and I'll share in chat, that we kind of have 4 general topics we're going to talk about today and kind of go through this guided conversation. And those are basically knowing and attracting your audience, first impressions, the importance of that, thinking outside the box, and what are tour operators looking for. And our hope for this session today is that we're just going to be able to have the tour operator experts kind of tell us what they're looking for in a museum or attraction, what makes it easy for them to book with us, what makes us something that comes to the front of their mind when they're booking their itineraries and schedules for next year. So super excited to have Mandy and Christina. And let's see, I think what we want to do first before we get started is I really wanted to do a land acknowledgement for us as we sit here in Anchorage. So if we could just sit quietly for a moment and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the understanding of place as we acknowledge this land. So I want to acknowledge this land, the mountains and rivers. We acknowledge this land where we present from today and where we now reside, work, and live. And that this land is the traditional homeland of the Dena'ina Athabascan people. Thank you. So Mandy, will you go ahead and maybe give a little introduction and an overview of Salmonberry?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting us to participate in this workshop. My name is Mandy Garcia, and I'm one of the owners of Salmonberry Tours. We live and work and play right here in downtown Anchorage on the traditional homelands of the Dena'ina. We're really excited to be able to share Alaska with visitors from all over, a lot of independent travelers, and we specialize in small group travel. So traditionally our groups are no more than 10 people. And looks like I might have some problems with my speaker, so I'm just going to turn it up a bit. Can you hear me now? Yes? Yeah? Okay, sorry about that. I saw that in chat. Thank you for the message. So I am a big part of our product development team. So we not only have an office here, but we also work up in Talkeetna and Fairbanks and even up over by Matanuska Glacier and Chickaloon. So when we create new product and design new product, we take a look at the communities in which we're traveling, and we decide what would be best to showcase for our visitors. So thank you so much. I'm excited to learn as much about your product as you are to ours. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mandy. Christina, can we hear from you? A little introduction?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I work for Premier Alaska Tours. We are Alaska owned and the largest receptive tour operator that is Alaska owned, which basically is a fancy way of saying we wear a lot of hats. We have 100+ motor coaches, and we provide land tours for a lot of different clients throughout interior Alaska. So we work with anything from cruise lines to student tours, and we'll talk a little bit about that because our range is pretty big, and so we have a lot of interest in the museums of Alaska, and we try to fit them in as much as we possibly can. So I think Mandy and I both are very excited to be here to share kind of what we do to really attract museums of Alaska. And we're also excited to hear from you and what you can provide to our guests that come here each year. So I run the logistics department here at Premier, and that basically just means we work with all of the vendors and hotels throughout the state. So we work closely with everybody, and we try to play the middleman between our clients, which, you know, like I said, we have a range of clients that travel with us, and you know, we have some small tours, but we mainly focus on the larger groups. And I think a lot of you, I've seen a lot of familiar names that have popped on here that we work with already. And so we work with, you know, I obviously am working with our sales team on whatever our clients are wanting, and then we're providing it through our partnerships with our vendors and hotels. So, so that's a big part of it. Land tours throughout interior Alaska. We really focus on rail belt, but we also have a lot more newer clients that are going outside the rail belt, you know, in more unique places in Alaska, which is really exciting. It's also really probably pertinent for me to mention, just because I did see some people that we already work with in this avenue, and that is shore excursion operations as well. At Premier Alaska Tours, we have kind of gotten into shore excursion management, which is basically where we're working with vendors and operators in some of our coastal communities for ports of call versus just a land tour. So land tours, while that's our main focus, we do have an operation where we are working on just those day trips for folks that are coming off of cruise ships just for a port of call. So we're doing that a bit more now, which is exciting, and we're working with even more of you, and we hope to work with even more of you now. So again, really excited to be here and to share anything that I can to really promote partnerships for all of us.
Thank you, Christina. I think Mandy signed off for just a minute. She's going to try to re-sign on under Zoom.
Yeah, how does that sound, Karen?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Thanks.
So when we talk about our tour companies, I think we know that there's a lot of different size tour companies in Alaska. There's different focuses. So there's a myriad of tour companies. Premier is a bit of a larger tour company, and Salmonberry focuses more on smaller group tours. And I think it's a really nice idea to think about how museums, also large and small and with different focuses, can attract the tour companies. Do museums want to do that? Is that a priority for your museum? And you know, what is your audience? And so I think it's important to kind of know your audience and know what that focus should be. I was looking through some of my favorite quotes. I keep a whole list of my favorite quotes as I go through life. And one of my favorite quotes is from Eleanor Roosevelt, and I'm going to put it in the chat right now. So I think at a child's birth, if a mother could ask a fairy godmother to endow it with the most useful gift, that gift should be curiosity. And I love that popped up for me today, because I feel like that's what we're kind of selling as museums in Alaska, is curiosity and learning about a new place. And so for each place in Alaska, we have a special focus and special interest, and we talk a lot about that joy of travel and the joy of curiosity. And I think that's one thing that we're selling. But as we go through knowing your audience and knowing your attraction in your audience, like Mandy, what are you looking for when you think about building a trip to a museum in Alaska into your schedule?
So a lot of times we have destinations on a daily basis that we go to already. And so if you are on our route, if you see our tour van, it could be on a daily basis, it could be once in a while. If you see us, reach out and say, hey, I see you passing us. Here's what we can do. When I look at things to include in our tours, it's definitely that unique spin, a stop the bus moment, where we might have a small group and you know that one of the members is really interested in history of the people of the place, right? And so we will, as tour guides, design and make sure we have these special stops in our toolbox. And so the more we know about your museum and your place, the better we can design the tour, or even create those impromptu stop the bus moments, which add a lot of value to our particular tours. We're not as rigid on our timeline many of times. And so we could be there as long as 30 minutes. We could be there, you know, if you could have anywhere like picnic tables or anything like that. What's fantastic is we would have an opportunity to include a lunch or a snack stop at that time, and that increases time spent at the museum. And let's see, I think that is the big concerns, or like the big takeaways from adding in Salmonberry.
And how about you, Christina? What makes a museum just front of mind and attractive to Premier as you're planning your schedules?
Yeah, I think it's super important to think about the audience, because I think that even between Mandy and myself, right, we have very different groups that are traveling to Alaska. You know, when I first started in tourism, you know, the main focus was cruise ship travel. And, you know, cruise ship travel is definitely still like a big model in Alaska, right? Everything is kind of modeled around cruise ships. However, in the last, you know, several years, I have noticed just internally how many more specialized groups we have that are coming to Alaska. And obviously, I think you all have realized in the last 2 years, without cruise ships, what the, you know, market of traveler is becoming, and it's different, right? And we have such a myriad of types of people that are coming to Alaska and looking for something very different. So my push would be for everybody to kind of just think outside the box of what type of traveler am I getting, right? And, you know, here at Premier, and I know Mandy's the same, we do build out itineraries years in advance, right? So these contracts with our clients are completed 2 years. I mean, we're working on 2023 right now. And, you know, we have these specialized groups that are, and, you know, we've seen a push at Premier for student travel. And I think a lot of that is from the pandemic too, of just kids sitting at home a lot and wanting to get out now, right? So, you know, that's a big one. And so student groups, educational groups, you know, we have some that are focused on Smithsonian, you know, or, you know, focused on something very specific. And we also have family groups, and we have, you know, older generation groups, younger generation groups. So I guess my advice to museums is really just to provide an idea or an option for different types of groups. You know, one thing we're constantly looking for is something that is focused and exciting and unique for that specialized group. So, you know, when we're building a student itinerary, if we have a list of all of these activities and experiences that they can add into the itinerary, we will add it right in, you know, and until we have that in front of us, it's very difficult, you know, to add it into the program. Obviously, we have those stops that we stop, you know, on, like, we're already going through the town, we're already stopping at this museum, and it's up to that tour director or that guide or driver to drop in. But, you know, if you're wanting you know, a real element of an itinerary, having that laid out for tour operators is so helpful. You know, hey, we do this with our student groups, you know, this specialized activity, and what the pricing is and all of that. So I guess that's just my kind of push when it comes to audience, is that our audience is expanding in Alaska. We have so many different types of audiences that we're trying to kind of really, you know, specify the interest to them. And there is so much to learn, right? And, you know, if you have a certain type of group that, you know, you have the, you know, the older cruise ship traveler that may lose interest really quickly, you know, and students who may lose interest very quickly. But if you really tap into what their interest is, you know, that's where we can keep them and really teach them and really give them the best experience that Alaska has to offer. So that's just kind of my little blip on audience, is just to make sure, you know, we think outside the box. And I know we're going to talk about that in a bit, but really think outside of what you normally do, and think about activities, and everybody is looking for an experience, you know, something unique. So thinking about just kind of focusing your activities on those different types of groups.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, both of you. I think one thing that we talked about when we were doing our little practice session also was thinking about what is around you, like what is around your institution that may be helpful as you try to sell your museum to a tour company. So if you don't have a restaurant at your museum, are there restaurants around you that would be good for groups that they could tie into? So helping the tour company to build out an itinerary based on what's around you. So as Mandy was talking about, like picnic tables outside, what other little value added things do you have that that are helpful as the tour operators there? You think about that tour director on a bus with 20 or 40 people trying to keep them happy. Everything needs to flow really well. And so maybe they don't know in, Wasilla or Sitka, other great restaurants or an additional attraction that they could tie into the day. That's really helpful to share with the tour operator as well, because we're all just always learning. I just put a poll up. Does your institution currently work with tour companies? And it's just a short answer poll. So we'd love to know if you do and if you do, how that works for you. So just a little short answer poll.
I'm wondering how many people.
When we talk about thinking outside the box, it's those kinds of moments of what is around you or what are you providing. I know this year and a half, this past 18 months, as we've dealt with closures and virtual programs, and we dealt with virtual programs, like what are you doing virtually or what are you doing that could help a tour company? So what are some of those outside of the box thinking moments that you guys look for? Christina, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Kind of just goes off of a lot of what I was saying, with the word unique is something that we hear a lot from our clients. They're always looking for something that is different, and especially when we're getting a lot of, similar types of clients with the same clientele, but they want something that's a bit more unique than the other client, right? So they're looking for something a bit more specialized. And experiences, right? We want something interactive. We want something exciting, whether it be a local speaker, Patty, I saw your note on there, and that's, you're so right. They want those local speakers. They want those, more just authentic Alaska experiences that they can go home and tell their friends about, right? And, if we have these ideas that are really just different than what somebody would normally get if they, just walk up to a museum. If you have an experience that is really catered to them, I think that's hands-on, interactive, walking tours or showing somebody something versus, telling. There's a lot of new types of groups. Like I said, we have some more high-end groups, and I know we've worked with some museums in the past for doing activities like meals at the museum, where you have a reception, where you also have a speaker that gives a little bit more insight to the institution and what is your culture, what are you trying to teach, what you want people to take away. And if you have that combined experience of a bit more high end and they feel special, and then as well as this experience, it really helps the overall experience, and people will go home talking about it, because they experience something that not everybody gets to. And I know Mandy and I had spoken a little bit about, the idea of some places even looking at opening early for a group or, or closing early and having the after hours, so you're not with the rest of the guests that are coming to your museum that day. That's always a really good way and exciting way to have something a bit more unique. Those are the kind of experiences that people are looking for and our clients are looking for, and just having that spelled out. Also in my notes, I know I was talk about winter too, just because it's such a, it's a different ball game. We all kind of revolve around summer travel, but winter tourism is coming up too, and having those unique experiences in winter as well, and presenting those is wonderful. And overall, I know I'll say this many times, just having something lined out where you say exactly what your experience is, how much it is, and how much time it's going to take, And those experiences we can literally fit right into an itinerary if we have that all laid out for years to come. So I just really encourage everybody to kind of really focus in on what makes your museum special and how you can show that in different ways.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to echo the seasonal because we are a year-round tour company. And I also want to give a shout out to the Talkeetna Historical Society Museum, who is just a fantastic partner to work with year round. Sue, I know you're on here, so thank you. And also, that's exactly what we need when we get weathered. That's exactly what we need when we have a group that has a half day. It's perfect. It's also the fantastic introduction to an area. So I think sometimes museums put that hat on, right? That first day hat. It is that welcome to the community. So whether they're flying into Anchorage and heading over to a museum straight away, what it does is it provides you an overview, and then the guides can build on that. So as a tour guide, we can use the exciting moments that they had at the museum for the rest of their trip. It's a fantastic way to get to know the clients. Another thing, I know we keep talking about meals, and I think it's because meals have been so difficult during COVID that one very easy way to get a tour operator to stop right now is if you can make that part of their lives easier. So, and then the timing aspect, I love the idea of, say like a 30-minute soft open where as long as it doesn't overextend your resources, we don't want to be a burden, right, as a tour operator. But if you can do like a 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute soft open where those guests are the only guests at the center or the museum, that is such a neat experience for the travelers, and it allows them to feel special. And generally there are folks in the museum ahead of time, and so if it's not too much of a hassle for resources to open up a little earlier, that's a really neat way to add value to a guest experience without adding a significant cost. The other, the last piece of it that I was thinking about when Christina was talking about, that menu of items, look and see where your height of your numbers are. If you know that you are so slow at 2 o'clock every single day, then that's the time where you say, hey, Salmonberry, we can do this really cool thing for you at 2 o'clock on Thursdays or whatever it may be. But take a look at your schedule and how busy you are through the day, so you can not have to add more resources, i.e. money, if tour operators stop, but put us in where you need us to be.
Right, and I love that too. When we at the Anchorage Museum get to be the tour that is the first tour for this group, they just come to Alaska the night before, and we get to welcome them in and have them see, our Smithsonian Arctic Study Center, or stand in front of that map of Alaska, and they get that overview of where they're going and what they're going to be doing. I think that's really important and special for groups. So I love the idea of building a museum in the community into the first day of your schedule. And I love what you just said, Mandy, about, kind of just encouraging us as museums to tell you what we can do, to not just absorb information from the tour operator of what you need. Okay, I'll see what I can do, but kind of taking the active role of, hey, at 2 o'clock we could do a private tour. At 2 o'clock we could bring a native Alaskan speaker in to speak with you. And so it's that idea of taking control or being creative and thinking outside the box and telling the tour operator what we can do. Like, okay, here's what you need, but what about if we could offer something at a different time, or open early for you? Then, tour operators are really just looking to have some spark. What's that spark that's gonna
Yeah,
bring.
there's also a lot of times during COVID, what I was noticing with some of the museums is they were putting together these like homeschool boxes for kids. That could be a very easy add-on for some of our family groups. We could buy boxes and put it in their welcome bag, and it could be an activity that they use during their travel through Alaska. And we might bring it out at a certain time, but it allows the children to also take something away from it. And a lot of the boxes were K through 12, which is fantastic. So if those are labeled K through 12, it'll be easy for the tour guide to order the correct box and also provide a source of income, because I imagine the boxes cost some. So making sure that on your list of menu items, you have what that costs. And if you've worked with tour operators before, you know that we need to know what we're gonna pay and how much time we should spend. And yeah, I think that the Heritage Center had that cultural box, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. I hope to get my hands on some of those soon. That
That's
was
an
a great
awesome
idea.
idea.
Yeah, I will echo Mandy as well, because I think that, you know your museum better than anybody, right? And giving us those options and ideas, is awesome. I think we're always trying to fit stuff into our itineraries based on just this notion that we know, what everybody's looking to provide, but there's so much that we're missing. I haven't been on the road in 10 years, as far as being actually actively a tour guide anymore, and really seeing it firsthand. So I think that we need to be told, like, contact me and let me know what you could provide and what would be valuable to our guests. That's what we want to hear, and we welcome that.
Yeah, and that like 2 or 3 sentences of what your highlight is super helpful in our itinerary planning, because we can plug and play that message, and it will it'll be easier for the traveler to understand what they're doing next.
So if museums have verbiage, if we can develop, as a museum, if you can develop a paragraph about your museum and what you would like that plug and play, put it into a guidebook or a website on the tour and travel company website, that's super important. Don't expect the travel agency to describe your institution. That's your opportunity to do that. So if you have, we always have paragraphs at the museum that I can just send out to tour operators so that they can just put those right into their schedule, or for a short excursion.
It's a super important concept, because I think, the best advocate is the tour director and the tour guide that is taking the group to you, and there's only one way to really control the message on what you're trying to, set up. And I know we'll talk about first impressions, but that's very, it's very, very important to really talk with the tour directors and tour guides and making sure they understand what, how they're presenting your museum. I think it's so, so, so important.
Christina, can you talk a little bit about that importance of a first impression and the importance of a welcome as you walk into an institution? Yeah,
absolutely. So, as a past tour director, and I know Mandy's been on the road before, first impressions, it is everything, right? When a guest gets to Alaska, they want to know that they're being taken care of and that they can trust the opinion of the tour director and the tour guide. And when they get to a location, they want to be set up, right? It's the worst thing. And when I train tour guides, that's what I would say. It's the worst thing just to drop somebody off and they don't have an understanding of what they should learn, what they could learn. And really setting up a location is so, so important. And I really feel like the institution takes a great role in that. And that is, like the Heritage Center, having the high school kids come on and welcome the group to the Alaska Native Heritage Center. And, those kind of first impressions are so valuable. And it allows that guest to be excited and want to come in and has a focus of what they should, pay attention to and what they want to learn. And there's key points, right? I was talking to Karen about the museum and how the museum is just, the Anchorage Museum is such a massive, entity with so much there And really, until you know your group and understanding what they're looking for, you can really focus them in, right? As a tour guide for a student tour, I can tell them as we're arriving, this Imaginarium and the, is the most amazing thing that you're going to enjoy, while you're here, and focusing them in on what they, I always kind of focus on the history, and because I know there's a lot of history buffs out there, right? So really focusing in and giving that first impression and kind of leading people to what they're going to experience is so important. I also think, I know that we all have, that employee at your institution that is vibrant, right? And I think that it's so important to really utilize those employees that can really give the best impression possible in the first impression. I think that's why we hire really vibrant tour guides and tour directors, is just to really excite people about Alaska. And I think that if they have that exciting kind of aura when they get in there, right? And people feed off of that. And that is what really kind of gives that first push before they go inside. So that to me is really important, like a step-on guide onto the motor coach, especially when you have such larger groups. I know for the van tours as well, but for larger groups, you have such an array of type of personality, right? And as long as you can kind of give them focus points on what to really enjoy at your institution, I think it's super important. And like I said, the tour director is your best advocate. Really, we try to bring in some museums and vendors at the beginning of the season and really teach our tour directors and guides what each museum and location can provide. And again, you are the best person to teach our tour guides and tour directors.
Patricia Relay made a comment that parking lots and bathrooms are also very important first impressions. And that is true. When they come in,
yes,
they want to know where the bathrooms are. And so it's really helpful when we can just come down, welcome the group, let them know where the bathrooms are so that they can start thinking clearly, because usually they just have to go to the bathroom and then we can have a conversation about what the museum has to offer. So yeah, that's very important.
And having a loading zone right in front of your museum is really a fantastic idea, or at least even a temporary loading zone. If you think that there's a group coming, it's a lot easier for the tour guide to pull up in the van and get out with the guests, because we don't have a driver and a guide. Our guide is also the driver, and so we like to we don't just want to open the door and kick them out, right? That's definitely not the Salmonberry way. And so having a loading zone there is super helpful.
Having a loading zone and like was mentioned, maybe even hop on the bus if you can. Know that, if the tour director knows you're going to be able to have a staff member come on and welcome the group right there where you have their, captive attention, that's really a nice little extra as well.
And for those museums that don't have the level of staff for someone to walk on, even just as soon as you walk through, like, you can tell if a tour guide is there. They generally will have a pink vest, and just saying, "Oh, Salmonberry, how are you today? Welcome to the museum," and that just sets the whole tone, and it makes for a fun trip.
I think one of the best gifts that a museum can provide for our visitors is that sharing of cultural information, cultural knowledge, so that I think the museum I think museums in general should do a really good job of giving a little of education about the history of the place, the culture of the place, and then that's kind of a good starting off point. People want to know. People come in wanting to learn more about Alaska Native cultures and how to respect this place that they're in. And so I think as we write our descriptions of our institutions and as we plan our tours, that should be an important front of mind point for sharing with tour companies. Because I think sometimes we're just wrapped up into what we're doing, and we don't understand that it's sometimes that these people have never been to Alaska and they have no idea. So you have to start from ground zero as we give our tours.
Karen, I was just going to pop in one more thing. I know that Mandy and I had talked about it when we were rehearsing, is about timing. And I think we mentioned it before, but just about how long do you recommend at your museum, right? What is the amount of time that, you find that guests get the most out of your institution? Because I think that's a really important thing. We have to find that kind of sweet spot, right? Where it's, not too much time, but you also want to make sure that everybody has enough time to enjoy the stop. So, providing that information to us is really, really helpful. And maybe even, classifying whether it's student groups versus adults, and kids versus adults on who, how much time they normally spend with you. I think that can be very important as well.
Yes, and we do have a poll up now. How long do you recommend for a visit to your museum? So do you know the answer to that question? And do you share that with tour companies? And what is that magic number? How big or small is your place? And how long before people are kind of ready to move on? And we all know that varies from person to person, but it's good to have that general idea so that you can help the tour companies build their itineraries with as long. I always say for the Anchorage Museum, it's 2 hours, and I could spend 6 hours, I would say, but I know people have museum fatigue, and so you have to kind of think about what it is for your museum, what you experience, and then share that with the tour operators when they're planning their itineraries as well. What about winter time? What about winter travel and year round? So do you find, Mandy, that a lot of the museums that you work with are open all year? Do you feel like more museums should be open longer? Are you experiencing more winter travel as we go through a boost in independent travel in 2021, 2022 coming forward?
Yeah, our winter numbers right now look really strong. And so I'm very excited about that. Generally, we partner with museums that are year round. That way our guides can get comfortable with the contacts there, because sometimes in the winter you have to just text them or email them to just double check, and I think having that system in place with the center and the museum is fantastic. That way you're on the same page. Hey, my guide is gonna message you the day before, or hey, my guide's gonna message you the day of. What do you prefer? And communicate that with the tour operator, because we're pretty flexible in that regards. I do see an increase in winter tourism. Aurora, everybody is asking for Aurora tours. And so if you have an Aurora exhibit at your museum, you should definitely push that. That should be a forefront of, and Aurora season is August 21 to April 21. I'm going to repeat that. August 21 until April 21. So it does encompass those slower times of the year. The people call them shoulder seasons. I don't like to do that. I like to call Alaska's year round. It's always in the season. But Aurora season is a great opportunity for museums to educate the guests on the science behind the aurora, or they could also have maybe a place for folks to warm up. I mean, maybe you consider late night openings. Maybe you have a staff member that's an aurora photographer and they are like, we've got a great location. I mean, that's the kind of thinking outside the box that could actually bring in some considerable revenue in the winter for the museum.
I love that. I think Aurora is so huge now, just statewide. So that's a really important thing to think about, especially for our museums up north that are joining us today. But all of us really. Want to kind of get into? Oh, go ahead, Christina. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to pop in about just the fact that, at Premier, we haven't predominantly been involved as much in winter tourism, but especially recently, we are seeing a massive push. And I think a lot of it is just the demand for travel that is pent up. And I think a lot of people are just looking within the United States for any kind of activity, and winter tourism has really been pushed. So our clients for this coming winter, we have a lot of tours, and that's makes it challenging for us because we haven't worked as much as Mandy and her team has for winter tours, in that, we have usually just the Iditarod kind of focused tour that we've done in the past. And now we're seeing it from February, through February and March. And so anything that you can provide my team of just ideas of things that we could do at your year-round museum would be phenomenal, because that is a market of traveler that is different, and they usually are return travelers to Alaska that come in the winter. They've already been here in the summer and they want to experience Alaska in the wintertime. And so I do think that that is a really exciting thing for me as an Alaskan. I think it's exciting that people want to come up in the winter, because I think that sometimes it's even more beautiful in the wintertime here. And I really think that it's a market that we could really expand, if we have more ideas and exciting activities for them. And then just one more thing I wanted to pop in is that when the one thing that I would love, and this may be kind of jumping into what we're looking for as tour operators, is a main contact at your museum. She's talking about texting, but that is massive for us. Communication over communication, and really learning, who to talk to at every museum and who we can kind of brainstorm with, right? And rather than talking to someone new every time. So a group's contact or a tour operator contact is essential in our mind.
Excellent. Right. I think looks like Melissa asked a question. What are some good starting points working with tourism reps to make it easy for them to be excited about working with us as museums? Are there things we can do to be more helpful and more proactive in order to be the best advocate for our museum? And that ties in really well with number one, have a main contact, have someone in your organization that tour companies feel comfortable with, that can call. It's really, tourism in Alaska is really about relationship building. It's a wonderful community of people in tourism in Alaska. And so, become part of that community, join Alaska Tourism Industry Association, go to the conference under normal non-pandemic times, and just kind of make those relationships so that you can be that main contact, or that one of your staff people can be that main source of information from your museum. That's very important. Utilize your Convention and Visitors Bureau in your community. Utilize your lists of, if you go to the HIA website or the Visit Anchorage website, and you can see the list of all the tour operators in Alaska, and that could be your starting point. If you're trying to reach out and have more tours in your museum, go to those places, get the contacts there, and then reach out to them and let them know what you have to offer. Which brings up another point. It's important to provide a group rate, right? A discount. So are you as a museum providing a group tour discount to tour companies? Can you talk a little bit about that, Mandy, and the importance of, the discount?
So sometimes we'll put it into a package and it'll just be part of a custom itinerary package where we created it, right? Another way to that we can work with museums is we can sell tickets for you. So if they have a free day in Anchorage, I can just put it in their welcome basket. And if you could sell a book of tickets to a tour operator that says, here's 25 tickets and it's good for, this season. And some people will buy back tickets because they just didn't get used up. Consider what you'd like to do as an organization. But I love being able to sell, the free time of Alaska with the museums in the area. I think people need to set foot and not have a guided experience the entire time that they're here. That way they can really, really understand where they're at and the place that they're living or temporarily on vacation. And so that's an easy way to do it. But we work with other operators. So Salmonberry does guiding, and we also do the travel itinerary planning. And we have, like this afternoon, I'll be escorting 13 travel advisors up at Independence Mine. And they're going to ask me, what should my guests do on their half day, in this location? Or can you put the travel package together? Well, if I put a travel package together for them, I need to pay them commission, which means that if I get paid retail, I pass that on to the travel agent, the traveler may end up paying more. So traditional commission or a net wholesale rate for a tour operator is anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending on how much business they can give you and at what capacity are they working with you. If it's a custom itinerary, and that's what this direct family is doing with us that day, that's one thing. If we're using that product, and reselling it to other people, like even TripAdvisor, they were asking for like 25% off of a tour. So if I only have 10% in your tour, that means I'm paying them to come to the property. Does that make sense? So having that structure there is super helpful for us. That way the traveler doesn't end up going to the museum for 1.5 times, because that is not the intention.
Excellent. Christina, do you have anything to add about group rates or the importance of that communication with the institution?
Yeah, I echo everything that Mandy just said. I think it goes for all of us. One thing that we do on our larger group tours is our tour directors will sell optional tours. So they'll actually sell directly to the guest. A lot of times it's larger activities, but sometimes it can be a museum visit. So just something to think about. But in order for us to even consider that, we do have to have a net rate versus a retail rate. And have that conversation. But again, I mean, it really just depends on the location, and we can work with you on whatever works best. And I did see that comment about kind of smaller museums that may just have one staff member, and those are, amazing stops, and we do want to work with you. And I guess I would just encourage you to reach out. Yeah, that one staff member can be my contact. I am happy with that, and really work with you and your volunteers on what makes the most sense for us. So I think it's really just about staying in communication with us
and understanding, like, remember before we were saying, like, where are you in the mix of your town? Because
right.
A museum representative could come to lunch with us somewhere and talk about the town. They could talk about the museum, especially if we know that they could do that introduction. They might be able to chat a little bit more about the museum, and then say, and now your next 2 hours, these are the options that you can do. And I love thinking outside the box, because generally the folks that work at the museum, they're not just working at the museum. They have these incredible stories of living where they are, and that's exactly that local feel, that local moment that these guests, they're no longer looking, my guests at least, they're not checking off boxes anymore. They're looking for an authentic Alaska experience, and the best way to do that is to look for the people.
And Alaskan locals, right? That is a big one. I can't even tell you how many times, that people are just astounded that I grew up in Alaska, right? And I think that, that alone is one thing, but to have all this knowledge and history and vital information to give them, and actually make that connection, not just talk at them, right? Really making that connection is so important. And that is what they go home and talk to their friends about. Guess who I met? And, that is, I think we're all trying to achieve that kind of interpersonal connection to Alaska when they come here. I think that's what we do so good in our own state, right?
One of my favorite reviews that we've gotten this year was saying we made this stop along the way, and we got to chat with a cultural interpreter from the Ahtna tribe, and they absolutely loved it. Like, that was the highlight of their day, and it wasn't even in the tour description, and they knew the person's name. They want to come back and see them again, and that kept with them, that stayed with them. And I love that. Yes, thank you, Selena.
Oh, nice. When we talk about building relationships with tour operators, building relationships with museums, it's also about building relationships with the visitors. And that's the bonus. That's the sweet spot where they really do want to build a relationship with you. And so I think just taking that deep breath, taking a moment to know that these people are coming to your place to learn about what your community has to offer, what we have to offer as spokespeople for Alaska, and that's our jam as museums and tour people. It's really the sweet spot to know that you need to just kind of take a breath, be present in the moment, and know that that's going to be the highlight of their day. When I give a tour at the museum, I always start out with talking a little bit about where I'm from, the maritime industry that our family is involved in, what my kids do, and they just love that. And then it really just makes the whole tour so much more fun because it's that personal touch that really matters. So important. Do we have any more questions from the group? There's a message about the Arctic Winter Games in 2024. So talking about winter tourism and dog sledding season. And I think that's really happening in Alaska, where we are not going to be just a summertime visitor destination anymore. It's people that have been here in the summer and they're coming back for winter. So we need to think about that as well. And it's super exciting to think about winter travel.
Something that you guys mentioned in rehearsal that I wanted to make sure was spotlighted is how far in advance that you guys work, and it's different versus when the race is happening and summer versus winter. So can you talk about that a little bit and what people can do if they haven't planned that far in advance? What can they do to still get on your list?
Right. So in rehearsal, we talked about the importance of booking in advance. So Christina, do you want to talk a little bit about that and knowing in advance what the needs are?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing I know that it's very hard to understand because just seeing internally how operators work, but especially we partner with some very large cruise lines that have to have their contracts in and set and ready to go 2 years in advance, sometimes 3, and we're working 23, 24 right now. And so we work so far in advance and we build these itineraries so they can market them to the travelers. So if you are looking to be real a portion of that itinerary in an included visit with something specialized, I need to hear from you now. It would be wonderful to start talking and really creating these experiences now because we are always working for it. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can't include anything in for this coming summer. Absolutely not. We can always do that in different ways. It's just that if you are looking to kind of have a long-term plan with a tour operator, I recommend getting that to us as soon as possible, and rates as well, right? One thing that we do while we are planning out these contracts and rates is we're pricing out itineraries multiple years in advance. And so if we have a pricing structure that goes 3 to 4 years even out, it's so helpful for us, and our sales team will love you forever because it makes their life a lot easier just to kind of just plug it right in and have that experience part of our itinerary.
Which sometimes is so different from like the curatorial staff and as we plan exhibitions at museums. I just think there's a bit of a disconnect there because tour and travel agencies, they want our rates 3 years out, they want to know our exhibitions 2 years out, 3 years out. And a lot of times at museums, we're kind of thinking of new exhibitions that are going to be coming out like next year. So we're thinking a little more short term, and tour operators are needing to plan out years in advance. So there's a bit of a just different way of working, I think. Tour companies.
Even if you have like an idea of what you're gonna like Arctic and winter Arctic, or it's any sort of theme, it just means we have a couple years to figure out like exactly what we're doing, right? So if we had an idea, or if you have an idea of what you think is going to happen in a couple of years, we can also work on that. So
that's good. So we provide like agreements that we send out to the travel companies. So we have a standard agreement, and we send it out for the next year, or sometimes we do a 2-year agreement. So they have those rates in advance if we've decided we're going to keep our rates the same for a couple of years. And that's very helpful to just be the impetus and provide the contract. Don't wait for the tour company to send it to you. You send it to them. And that's helpful for them to know what we have to offer as a museum.
Karen, I did see a note in there. Someone was asking about the cruise ship industry, so I can pop in and answer that real quick.
Let's talk about
obviously,
cruises. That sounds good.
Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball, that's for sure. But I will say that, you know, the 22 is looking crazy busy. And cruise ships are included in that. And I think that, you know, with our conversations with cruise lines, the expectation is that they are going to be back in a big way in 22. I think that especially because we're still seeing the hesitancy to go to Europe, cruise travel is going to be big in Alaska in 22. And we've already gotten, you know, changes of ship routes and all of that, and we are blocking a lot of space for 22. So that is the expectation. Obviously, we all know things can change in an instant, and we have to kind of be ready for everything. But what I find super interesting, and I mean, everything has just been so fascinating, the change in the market of the traveler and the independent traveler. But now we have this whole new market of independent travelers that have come to Alaska and told their friends, you know, so we're going to have kind of a mix of cruise ship travel and this independent travel element. So I think we're going to see a lot of travelers in 22. So be ready.
Mandy, what do you think about the cruise industry and your outlooks?
Well, yeah, I agree. I also think that you need to figure out if people aren't coming to your museum as much as you would like, figure out where they're going and then tell those people about you. So we do that all the time. We are sold out of our afternoon tour. So instead we're like thinking, okay, what can we tell visitors to do? Because and if you have a visitor center, or if you have just a hot attraction in your neighborhood, get to know those people and tell them that word of mouth partnership is super strong.
Good suggestion. That's awesome.
Especially
Right.
for
So
independent.
think about your partners. Who are your partners in the community? Who are your partners in the tour industry, and how can you make those work to your best advantage? Yeah, it's great. I have a final quote I'm going to share in the chat to kind of wrap up the session. Another one of my favorites. Many a trip continues long after movement in time and space have ceased. And so I love that, because as we talk about sharing your facility and your institution with tour operators and with visitors to Alaska, you want to leave that lasting impression, right? So think about what it is that you're going to communicate. What are you going to show in an exhibition? What are you going to talk about in a docent tour that is going to stay with someone and have them remember your community and your facility? I love Mandy talking about the leader from Ahtna and how the visitors walked away with that memory of that person, how they're going to, you know, they have that connection now. They have a friend in Alaska with that person. And they also have a friend in Alaska with the tour director. Those are sometimes lifetime friendships, and you know, you're kind of creating those at your institution as well. So you know, I've got people I've given tours to that I still, you know, keep in touch with. And so you're really making that lasting impression and hopefully doing a real service to our state, to our Native communities, and to, you know, just the feeling that people get when they visit us in Alaska.
Awesome.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing and for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Mandy, Christina, I can't thank you enough for your awesome, you know, knowledge. You guys are rock stars, and we sure appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us so that we can become, you know, better partners with the tour and travel industry. So thank you all, and thank you for attending.